Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Nellie Christine, and today I'm going to be talking about one of Neville Goddard's books. It is called Awakened Imagination. I have here his deluxe collection. It's all 14 of his books in one. And so I'm going through each one by one and reading them and kind of giving you a summary of each one. So today we're going to talk about the second book, which is called Awakened Imagination. And I'm going to give you a quick little recap of what I thought were the most important things to note about from this book. So, in Awakened Imagination, Neville Goddard argues that imagination is not fantasy, it is the creative force behind your reality. He teaches that your outer world is a reflection of your inner assumptions, beliefs, and mental pictures. Okay? According to Neville, the life that you currently live is the result of the identity and emotional states that you repeatedly imagine yourself to be. So, the central idea of the whole book is basically you do not get what you want, you get what you believe yourself to already be. Neville teaches that that most people use imagination subconsciously or unconsciously. They keep replaying fear, rejection, failure over and over in their minds, and then they wonder why their external life keeps reflecting those same patterns. So the solution to all of this is to awaken your imagination to actually use it deliberately. The key teachings from this book overall include imagination creates your reality. So your inner world eventually becomes whatever your outer world is. In other words, your outer world eventually becomes whatever you imagine in your mind. The second thing is assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Don't think about what you want. Think from the version of you who already has it. Okay, I'll give you an example. So, let's say if you want to be married, okay, you're gonna think not from the reality of like, oh, I want to find a husband, I want to find a husband, I want to find a husband. You're gonna think from the reality of, I have a husband, I have a husband. Like if you had a husband, you wouldn't even be thinking, oh, I have a husband. You would just be thinking of, I wonder what we're gonna do today. What should I make us for dinner? Um, I gotta pick up the dry cleaning, or I gotta do this, or I gotta do that. Like I gotta remember to, remind him to take out the trash, whatever it may be. Like think and move as if you are already that person who has the husband, or fill in the blank of whatever your specific manifestation, whatever you want your manifestation to be. And the third thing is creation is finished. So Neville believed every possible version of reality already exists, and your consciousness selects which version you experience. Now, this is like a little bit meta for me. Like, it's hard to grasp and to understand the reality of it. And sometimes I even question whether I really believe this or not, but you know what? I'm just gonna go with it. If they're saying he's not the first person I've heard to say this, that basically we have so many different timelines happening all at once, and we have the power to choose whatever timeline that we want to live. And yes, I can see how that can be true. But also, like, it's still really hard for me to like process that that is actually true. Because, like, what do you mean to tell me, like, I can pick whatever reality I want? Well, according to the manifestation gods, yes, you can. And then the other thing is your identity determines your life. So if you constantly identify as broke, rejected, or unlucky, then you're going to keep recreating those outcomes. Now, I think we kind of have some experience of that. I just feel like, lucky people get luckier over time, and people who are constantly in a bad mood and constantly like in search of like how people are going to like screw them over or when they are in constant search of things that can go wrong, usually it ends up going wrong. I know, let's say, parents who are constantly worried about their kids, worried about, oh my God, my kid is going to get sick if they go and do this thing. If they don't put on their PJs right after the shower, they're going to get sick. And they were constantly talking about their kids getting sick. And guess what? Their kids kept getting sick. And it just became this self-fulfilling prophecy. Whereas there are some parents that are just like super laid back, super just nonchalant, and they're not stressing so much about their kids getting sick. And then guess what? Their kids don't really get sick as often. So I do believe that 100% that like what we think about and what we believe to be true ends up showing up in our reality one way or another. And revision changes your future. So he encourages mentally revising painful events before sleep so that the subconscious accepts the new story. I think that is such a powerful tool. I have actually personally used this in my own life. I had, it wasn't like that I was thinking of necessarily traumatic experiences from my childhood, but I noticed certain patterns happening in my life as an adult. And when I really sat down and meditated on it, I was able to actually trace back to my childhood things that happened that make me believe that that is the cause of how I am today, if that makes sense. Okay? Like, I'll give you an example. When I was younger, we were in a store, like a toy store, or I don't know what kind of store it was. But the point is, there was one of those like mechanical cars that kids get, and um, it's like the real, almost the real life size, like for kids. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But back in the day, those were so expensive. At least my perception of them or how what I was made to believe is that they were so expensive. Right now, I feel like they're a little bit more common, but at the time, I all I ever wanted was one of these cars. And I was not given the opportunity to get one of those cars. Like I asked for it and then I was just told that, you know what, like this is just really expensive. Like, and then I was not given an opportunity to say like, okay, well, you know what, maybe if you work at it, if you do all your chores, or if you save up your money, or if you work for like I was never taught what I could do to get it. I was simply just told, no, you can't have it because it's too expensive. And now when as an adult, when I see little kids with that same toy car, I get really jealous, like as an adult, which I know is silly, but I still have that little bit of, call it, I don't know if, I wouldn't say it's trauma, but it's just like that little thing inside of me that brings up these emotions of like, how come I didn't get that when I was growing up? So what I did was, and how I saw that playing out in my current life is, I think like not really asking for what I desired and um kind of like dimming my own desires a little bit for the sake of we can't afford it. I think that was like one of the patterns that was showing up in my life as a result of that. So what I did was I've been doing some meditation where I sit down and I visualize myself as a little girl in that toy store asking for this car and then actually getting it. And I keep replaying it and replaying until it feels so real, until it feels like I actually did get that car. And now whatever hurt or trauma that might have caused me as a young kid is going away. Little by little, it is slowly dissipating. I no longer have this charge towards a thing that happened so long ago that is now kind of showing up. So that is something that you can do if you have been through some kind of like traumatic experience. Like my story, obviously it wasn't that traumatic, but let's say you have been through something even worse than that. maybe your parents let you down in some way, or maybe someone else like hurt you as a child. You can go back and like replay that moment in your life and then rewrite it any way that you want in a way that serves you, that kind of like, squashes like the feelings of like the pain that was associated with that. This is such a powerful tool and use it, very carefully. But I've tried it for myself and it's actually worked wonders in other areas of my life, which I won't get into too much, but maybe one day we'll revisit that because I did think it was really life-changing for me. So, and that's why he says revision changes your future. So when you have some kind of like painful event, just go back and rewire it in your mind and like accept a new story, rewrite the story. And last but not least, feeling is the secret. So your emotion impresses the subconscious more deeply than words alone. Ultimately, this book is about becoming conscious of the stories that you repeatedly tell yourself and realizing that imagination is either building your future or destroying it. So, whatever future that you want for yourself, all you have to do is just keep imagining and imagining it. Use your imagination as a tool to create the reality and the future that you want. And it's not just something that you use to daydream. Again, it is the creative force behind your personal reality. So, whatever your present reality is because that is what you imagined. That is your imagination basically brought to life. And whether you realize it or not, you are already using your imagination every single day. When you imagine, let's say, assuming that you are behind in life, or if you are picturing yourself failing, or if you're imagining things going wrong or not as good as you want it to be, or when you are picturing a present reality that isn't what you want, but you just keep replaying it over and over again, like I don't have a husband, I don't have a husband, then that you doing that is using your imagination. Okay, so you are using your imagination and maybe you don't even realize that you are. But the problem is that most people are using their imagination against themselves because they're imagining things that they don't want. And Neville says that the problem is not that people lack the imagination, it's that their imagination is asleep. And when it's asleep, you are living just reactively instead of creatively. You are not using it to create your reality. You are just living in the imagination that you are already creating, if that makes sense. You are just becoming a victim of your circumstances instead of the architect of your identity. And so when I look back on my own life, every major transformation, if you think about it, started with something that I decided internally. For example, when I decided to get my CPA license, I imagined myself doing it and I felt like, yes, this is something I want to do. And then I did it. When I was thinking about moving to Miami, first it was just a thought. And then I actually sat and pictured and visualized and imagined my life living in Miami. And sure enough, boom, I decided and I did it and it was done. And then I said, you know what? I want to go and I want to lose the weight. And little by little, the universe kind of uh, co-created that for me. Like it basically put the circumstances in my way to finally lose the weight. All right. So overall, all of that is a shift in your self-concept. I shifted my self-concept and then the results showed up. Okay. I started seeing myself differently first before the world did. And Neville talks about this constantly. He says, you must stop thinking of your desire and start thinking from it. That is the massive distinction. Most people think of the life they want. Like, I want to be rich, I want to be sexy, I want to be successful, but mentally and emotionally, they still identify as the old version of themselves. And he says that your reality changes when your identity changes, meaning when when the woman who has the dream body starts visualizing and imagining and moving and living and breathing and eating and sleeping like the woman who has her dream body. When you start believing it up here, you start moving differently, and then the results show up in your reality. The wealthy version of you does not wake up feeling like a victim every morning. The confident version of you is not obsessively asking for permission. The successful version of you is not constantly affirming failure. And this is why I always say your self concept is everything. It starts with that. Because eventually your external world has no choice but to mirror your dominant internal identity. And one of the most powerful concepts in the book is Neville's idea that creation is finished, meaning every possible version of you in life already exists. There is already a version of you that is healthier, that is richer, more beautiful, more disciplined, more successful. The question is, which version are you emotionally identifying with every day? Because your imagination is selecting the reality. And honestly, once you understand this, you start becoming very careful with your thoughts. You realize that you have constantly been telling yourself, "Oh, I'm ugly, I'm broke," or "I always fail," or "Why aren't there any good men out there?" or "Why can't I lose the weight?" You are rehearsing that identity, whether you know it or not. In fact, it wasn't until I really got deep into this work that I realized that my thoughts were actually a lot more negative than I even thought that they were. Because I thought I was a very positive person. But when I actually started to pay attention to every thought that came up, I realized like I might be like 60% positive and 40% negative. And the more I got into this work, the more aware I became of those negative thoughts. And little by little, I was actually able to change them. I was able to be aware of them quicker, and I was able to like literally nip them in the bud right as they came up and then rewire it. Like, oh, I'm feeling this way because guess what? I just, you know, I don't know. I think I was saying like I had some pain over here, and that's because like I just gave birth, I just had a baby, and blah, 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 blah. I don't know what I was saying. But the point is, I took whatever I was feeling and I alchemized it and I rewrote whatever thought I had into something like even better. Have you ever noticed how some people seem lucky everywhere they go? Opportunities seem to appear for them. People help them. Money just kind of magically flows to them. Meanwhile, another person constantly experiences chaos, rejection, struggle, and disappointment. And Neville would argue that it starts internally because the outer world mirrors the inner world. And one thing he talks about is he doesn't just say positive thinking. That's surface level talk, okay? We're going deeper. He talks about actual embodiment, actual feeling, actual identity. And he says that feeling is the secret. It's not about the words you say like the affirmations and like all you have to actually believe it and feel it from within. Meaning you have to emotionally move into the version of yourself who already has the desire, not just faking it in externally and not by lying to yourself, but mentally rehearse becoming that person. And this is why visualizations can be very successful for some people. Athletes do this, entrepreneurs do this. They literally, athletes especially, will visualize themselves hitting the ball. They'll visualize themselves getting it into the basket thousands and thousands and thousands of times before they ever actually step on the court. This is a proven technique that actually works. They mentally experience success before it physically materializes. And Neville also talks about revision, which I think is one of the most underrated concepts ever. Okay, revision means going back mentally and rewriting painful experiences. So instead of replaying humiliation, rejection, or failure before bed, you replay the scene the way you wish it happened. And why? Because your subconscious mind responds to imagination and emotion. And honestly, I think so many women carry old identities because they keep emotionally replaying and reliving their old stories, like old heartbreaks, failures, or old versions of themselves. And then they wonder why they can't step into that new life. But you cannot become your future self while emotionally worshiping your past self. At some point, you have to let the old identity die. And I know this sounds dramatic, but it's true. The woman who transforms her life usually becomes unrecognizable mentally first because it's typically a decision that you make. You literally wake up one day and you're like, enough is enough. I'm so done with this current reality. F this shit. I'm making some changes, like, and it's happening today. And then watch out, world, watch out. When a woman decides, she is like becomes one of the most powerful, most unstoppable creatures on earth. Like, don't get in her way. And that's where I wish and I hope that everyone gets to, like that point where you're just like, enough is enough. Like, I'm going for it. I am going after everything that I want and I'm going to make it happen. My hair is like looking crazy right now. So, when that happens, guess what happens in addition to that? You start raising your standards, you start tolerating less BS, you start paying attention to everything that you're consuming, everything that you're saying and doing. That all of that is your awakened imagination coming forward. Like it's trying to literally come out and just like become that better version of yourself. Okay. And Neville also believed that your imagination is connected to spirituality. He interpreted many biblical teachings psychologically rather than literally. He believed Christ represented the divine creative power within man, which is imagination itself. And so, whether you agree with all of Neville's spiritual interpretations or not, the practical lesson is still quite powerful that your inner world matters more than people realize. And if you don't consciously direct your imagination, the world will do it for you. So, whether it be through social media, whether it be through the news or other people's limitations or your own past or your own trauma, something is always trying to program your identity for you. So the real question becomes, what are you repeatedly imagining yourself to be? What are you allowing other people to imagine it to be? And instead of allowing other outside forces to dictate who you are, why not make that decision internally? Because eventually, when you make that decision for yourself, what you want it to be, everything is going to change for yourself. You will start attracting and manifesting everything it is that you want in your life. Not just physically, not just financially, but literally everything. Because once a woman changes her self concept, again, everything will change. So that is what my book is about, Sexy Rich Body. And this, I do believe that it all starts with ourselves, right? It starts with our physical body, it starts with our mentals, it starts with everything. And so this is basically like like the starting point of wherever you are in life. Start here, get the book, Sexy Rich Body. It is going to elevate you to the next level, whatever that looks like for you. And if you are able to do so, grab a copy of the course, the companion course that goes along with it, that takes all the concepts in the book, and then it gives you bite-sized ways of how you can apply it into your life and in such a way that it is so seamless, it doesn't even feel like you're doing any work at all. And I will go ahead and link them for you below. So that's where I would recommend starting. I'm reading this book for you so that you don't have to, but basically the point is it all starts with your imagination and how do we get our imagination to be exactly where we want it to be, where it feels truly real and truly embodied. Start with yourself. Start with this book, Sexy Rich Body. I promise you, you will love it and it will definitely take you to the next level version of yourself. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time.